Welcome back to Making Money Matter, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kerry Stevenson. I'm your host, and I've asked Dr. Mike Jones. He is the Managing Director of Impact Minerals. Actually, I should call this Making HPA Matter, and I bet you're thinking, what the hell is HPA? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. Mike, keep calm. You're the doctor. Thank goodness I'm not. Great to see you, big smiley face, and I know why you're smiling. We're going to talk about this in a minute, but welcome to Making Money Matter.
That's great, Kerry, and we've done a few interviews over the years. So congratulations on this new venture for you. It's going very well. So well done.
Oh, thanks, Mike. I really appreciate it. It's scary when you start, but you know what? The support from everyone out there, I love you, my community, has been fabulous. But you've had quite the journey as well. As you said, you and I have spoken in the past. Before we get into the latest iteration, and it's not a complete turnaround, if you like, ladies and gentlemen. Impact Minerals, they have been listed for a little while, but there's a new project. Why I wanted to get Mike on board is their Lake Hope project over in Western Australia, which they acquired earlier this year, but is turning out to be a bit of potentially a company maker for Impact Minerals. So I'm going to go into the detail of that. But before we do that, Mike, give us the brief background of who are Impact Minerals for our audience out there.
Yes, so Impact Minerals, we listed, as you said, some time ago, and we set the company up to discover a world-class ore body. It's been my philosophy over the years that there's too many companies with, small mines, one-mine companies, and unless you're someone like a Bill Beaumont who can build things by merger and acquisition like Northern Star did, it's a very long road to hoe. And we see time and time again, small mines, I'm talking 50,000 ounces, maybe 100,000 ounces of gold or gold equivalent. And it's just not really, worth it. It's not worth getting out of bed in the morning, anything less. And so that was always our philosophy in Impact Minerals. And as you know, I worked for Western Mining. I was in their project generation team and worked as a consultant for many years, drawing boxes on maps and trying to find the big discoveries. But those things are few and far between. And that's been demonstrated really over the last couple of years, where we can probably name three big ones. The most recent one is Azure. But you probably add a couple of the other lithium ones. Tony been around for 20 years before making that big discovery with Azure. And then we have De Grey. De Grey had been going 16, 17 years, and then boom, out of nowhere, world-class discovery over a few years. And I will mention Chalice. I mean, Chalice has obviously been a little bit disappointing over the last few months, but again, out of nowhere, billion-dollar market caps for all three of those companies without even turning a sod of earth. And that's really what it's all about. That's really what I play the game for, and what many of my cohort, my peers do as well. But they're few and far between. And as I've just listed those companies, all of those are basically almost 20 years old before they made their discovery. So it's a tough road, but one that we've enjoyed. And look, we put a lot of money into the ground. We found a lot of unusual things. We just haven't quite had that little bit of luck that we needed to find the big one ourselves. But anyway, we're hoping Lake Hope is a different story.
Well, I don't have time today, or we don't have time today to go through all the projects, because I look at Impact Minerals. You're a project generating company. That's what you're looking for, and you're looking for the big one, not the little tiddly one. So let's focus firstly on Lake Hope. Now, Lake Hope is over in WA. First of all, what is it? When and how did you acquire it? And why is it putting such a big smile on your face that you think that this could be a game changer for, patient shareholders out there?
Yeah, indeed. So Lake Hope, it's a high purity alumina project, and I think we'll probably talk about what high purity alumina is. It's located about 500 kilometres east of Perth. And 100 kilometres south of Southern Cross, and it occurs in two unusual small salt lakes, and they're called players. And hence, for those who've seen our presentation, we have this with a new player in the HPA space. That's a geological pun for those who don't understand how funny that can be. So and we did the deal in March, but we came across the project late in 2022. And it was a guy that I know, and interestingly, we actually found it on LinkedIn.
Big shout out for LinkedIn. Oh, you can sponsor it next time, ladies and gentlemen. LinkedIn.
Some people have said, well, finally there was a use. Somebody found a use for LinkedIn. which is social media for grown-ups in a way. But it is a great medium of communication in our business, and it's certainly taking off. So if you're interested, I can elaborate on that little story.
Yeah, please do. Yeah, because it's very straight. LinkedIn. How did that happen?
Yeah, well, it isn't every day you can say, look, I found a world-class ore body on LinkedIn. Yeah. But what happened was there's a gentleman called Roland Gotthard. He's a geologist. I'd met him a couple of times from afar and realised that he was a very good project generator. Anyway, he also posts extensively on LinkedIn. And over a couple of years, as it turns out, he'd sort of been dangling little tidbits of information about this project that he had, and was trying to produce alumina from it. Anyway, one day, one of my geologists came to me. He said, Mike, he said, Roland's drilling for aluminium in sand dunes. And now, as a geologist, that's an incredibly curious thing to be doing. And that piqued my curiosity. And so we took a look at what he was doing. At one point, I thought we might have had something similar on our ground, but maybe 10 times larger. But as it turned out, that wasn't the case. And so we got in touch with Roland. He sent me the information memorandum on the project, and it was a bit of a moment. We're going to have to do this project.
Oh, and why?
The reason for that was that it was quite clearly, potentially a world-class deposit. On our other projects, we were still a long way from even defining a resource, especially with our focus back in WA over the last couple of years. And whilst we're still very bullish on that, and we'll talk about that, it was all of a sudden, there's a world-class deposit. It's been found. It looks so easy to mine and process. We have a real chance to be a significant player in the high purity alumina space. Yeah, so after quite a bit of due diligence, et cetera, we decided, hey, look, this is actually worth giving it a go for our shareholders.
All right, so you've done the deal now. Is it 100% impact project now?
No, it's we have the right to earn 80% by completing a pre-feasibility study.
Okay.
And that's with Roland's private company, Player One Limited, and Proprietary Limited. So the deal is very straightforward. So we complete the pre-feasibility study. We would issue them at that point, assuming we go ahead, 110 million shares at whatever the price is on the day, but it's capped at $8 million. So let's say we had a discovery in one of our other projects. There's an upside. There's a limit to the dollar value of the shares that we're going to issue.
Okay.
So fairly straightforward. And then there's a similar process at the completion of a definitive feasibility study. There's another 100 million shares and capped at 10 million. So we wouldn't pay any more than $18 million in shares to get 80% of the project. And then they're just free carried to a decision to mine with that 20%. So fairly straightforward joint venture deal, but their upside is capped. Ours is sort of a bit unlimited if we end up having, say, a discovery on one of our other projects. So all in all, that would leave Player One with a current capital structure with about sort of 8 or 9% of the company. So they're very happy with the deal, and it's a very good deal for Impact shareholders. So pretty pleased.
Why are you so confident that this is going to be a project that delivers? Because I said a little while ago that your project generators, you had a number of projects over the years. What makes this one any different? I mean, it's HPA. Okay, we'll get into the market and all that later. But really what I'm trying to get to is why, because I know that you were pretty excited about this when I saw you recently. I want to know, what is it about this project versus all the other projects that Mike Jones has been involved in over the years?
Well, there's actually, as we talked about, a world-class deposit. Now, a lot of people talk about world-class, but if we look at the economics on our scoping studies, just recently, those numbers are right up there with some of the best of any project that's going around, basically. That's assuming that we can get to a particular production level in HPA. So the thing I love about the project geologically is that it's relatively straightforward to mine it, and it's going to be relatively straightforward to process it up until the last powder of HPA, which requires certain physical and chemical things to be done to it to get it to the specification of the offtake. But really, there's a world-class mine and system just laid out, ready for us to drive along and go along the journey of trying to bring this thing into production. Until you get out on the lake and realize how easy and straightforward it's going to be to dig this stuff up, it's at that point that it really hits you. So, oh my goodness, this really is something extraordinary. And
okay, let me stop you there for a second, Mike. When you say it's something quite extraordinary, there are other HPA, like everyone talks about alpha HPA. And I remember it was only, I think in 2019 from memory, they were about a 10 million market cap. Yep. You're a 30 million market cap. They're now $1 billion and it's only 2023. They've got an HPA project. I want to do a comparison if you don't mind.
Sure.
What's the difference between the two, between yours and theirs? Because I'm trying to go, is there going to be a similar journey, or what's the differentiations?
Yeah. So the Alpha HPA journey is a good one to track, because back in 2019, as you said, they were a junior explorer like ourselves. They came across a novel process to produce HPA using solvent extraction. Solvent extraction is well known, but it's the nature of the solvent that you use to extract the HPA, which is proprietary to Alpha. And so they then started to demonstrate that process worked on their laterites, their weathered material in their rocks. But after a period of time, they then discovered that it actually worked on a chemical feedstock, which they actually get from Orica, and they mix it, we think, with some clay from Rio Tinto. And they have this mix, which then goes through this solvent extraction process. So in essence, Alpha jumped out of the resources space and are now an industrial chemicals company. And they have really knocked it out of the park over the last 3 to 4 years, because what they've demonstrated over time is that they have the ability to make HPA to the physical and chemical specifications that are required by the end user. And during that process, they were starting from scratch, a bit like us, starting from scratch, and then progressively over time, they just tick the boxes. Here we can produce HPA, we've got the right chemical purity, we can produce the right physical modifications, we've got material into qualification, we've got some offtake agreements for small amounts, and then lastly, but surely they're starting to get bigger and bigger offtake agreements now as people recognize that they're coming to the market as a serious player.
But is their deposit similar to yours? Because I know that Lake Hope, it's almost like a quarry operation, isn't it? Because you don't have to drill blast. You're literally kind of moving the sand, if you like.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So no, they are very different, as I mentioned. So
okay.
So Alpha have got a chemical feedstock. It's actually waste chemicals from Orica, the fertilizer and explosives company. And right. So Orica have got a 5% plus shareholding in Alpha HPA, and they've got a very close relationship. And that's been, as I say, that's been very successful for for Alpha getting towards and being able to produce the very pure end product. So they've done a great job there, and they're the standout, because the other way to make HPA is obviously by leaching of natural substances, rocks, weathered rocks, varying things. And there's a variety of them, but the key one that most people have been focused on over the last 4 or 5 years has been the hydrochloric acid leaching of kaolin clay. And people have successfully produced modest amounts of HPA by that process, but none of them have actually been able to sort of scale up. Other people have used other minerals apart from kaolin, none of which have been able to sort of really progress. And part of the reason for that is the capital expenditure that's going to be required to build a plant of significant size is actually quite high for the hydrochloric acid leaching approach. And that's because it's done under temperature, not pressure, but high temperature. And so there's a lot of issues with the grade of steel that you need, the nature of it that you have in the plant. With high temperature hydrochloric acid, it has to be another grade higher of requirement, chemical requirement, than for example sulfuric acid, which is our approach. So just to be clear, we're not mining kaolin. We're mining a set of evaporite minerals that occur in the lake, and they are easily digestible in sulfuric acid, which is a cheaper and more readily available and usable acid than hydrochloric acid. So that's sort of, I think, part of the education process. We've had
Yeah.
a few, online saying, oh, it's just kaolin, blah, 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 but it's actually not that at all. It's, naturally occurring minerals in the top 2 meters of the salt lake, which, as you mentioned, is free digging, and we can dig it up and ship it out.
Okay. Well, speaking of digging it up and shipping it out, you've done a scoping study, correct?
We have, yes.
Can you talk us through those numbers? Because I think for investors, that is a very important part of the equation.
It is. The big number that everyone needs to remember is 50%.
Sorry?
Okay, is 50%.
Okay.
So the big number out of the scoping study is that we believe that we can produce HPA at between 30 to 50%, maybe more, cheaper than anybody else in the world. Okay,
it's a big statement, Dr. Jones.
It's a massive statement, and really the scoping study proved, what we kind of already, we sort of knew, we'd have to be in the ballpark in terms of what the figures were going to be. But once everything came together, it was really astonishing at how cheaply we might be able to produce HPA. And that's a relatively unoptimized process. So there's probably, there's things that we can do as we move further into the feasibility studies. So that's the big number. And I like to say that, HPA is a bulk commodity, right? There's no shortage of precursor rocks, materials, there's chemical feedstock in order to produce, high purity alumina. In that sense, it's similar, and I'll pick lithium as an example, right? Whilst there's a big demand for lithium at the moment, there's no shortage of lithium, right? I mean, everyone's finding massive lithium deposits, everywhere, in hard rock, in the Pilbara, we've got, Gina and Chris Ellison.
Bloody everywhere.
Going bananas, and we missed that boat, unfortunately. And then we've got the brines in South America, et cetera, et cetera. And there's going to be no shortage of lithium, right? And that's probably already playing out a little bit in the sense, the lithium carbonate prices have cratered this year. So despite the fact the shares have gone well, so no shortage. And so when you're in this space of bulk commodities, and it's the same in a way with iron ore and coal, and this is huge demand. One of 4 things has to be true, at least one of 4 things in the bulk commodity space. So first, you're kind of going to have the biggest, so like the massive iron ore deposits of the of the Pilbara. Second one is you have to have the highest grade, right? So we're seeing, if you're in something like niobium or rare earths, there's no shortage of those. It's all about who's got the highest grade deposit and how easily they can dig it out of the ground. The third one is first to market, and that's actually what's happened with Pilbara Minerals. They were basically first to market in Australia, apart from Greenbushes, but they had their own supply and offtake agreements. But Pilbara Minerals has just been killing it, over the last few years, been able to pour material out into the market, and billions of dollars in the bank, so they can survive through the cycle. And the last one is, you've got to be one of, if not the lowest cost producer. And that was the thing that attracted me to the project right from the start. This thing, had the chance of being one of the lowest costs, but right now it looks like it's, could be the lowest cost. I have to be careful what I say, of course, because somebody will call me up and say, oh, there's a small deposit in, rural China where they're digging it up for $2.50.
Yeah. But do the numbers for me off the scoping study, if you could, for us.
Yeah, sure. So let's deal with the operating cost first, because that's what it is. So we think we can produce high purity alumina for about 3,000, call it $500 per ton. Okay. Now, as far as we know, our competitors, from feasibility studies that are actually a few years old and haven't accounted for the obviously significant inflation since then, they're sort of in the $6,000, $7,000, and $8,000 per ton range.
Wow. Okay.
And that includes Alpha HPA. Their feasibility study from 2020, had it at about $6,000 a ton, and we haven't been able to. There's been no announcement since about what their actual operating cost is in through there. And when you consider HPA can sell for anything north of $15,000, $20,000, $25,000 a ton, then that gives incredible operating margins.
Incredible. All right.
That's the big number in through there. So the second number is, how much is it going to cost us to build the plant?
Exactly.
And we'll switch to Australian dollars because people probably understand that a little bit better. But it's 250, almost exactly, million Australian dollars to build the plant. Now that's a full-scale plant at 10,000 tonnes a year. In our scoping study, we're very conservative, not only on the HPA price, which we use $22,000 a ton, whereas our competitors are using $24,000 and $28,000 a ton.
Okay.
Our numbers go crazy if we use those higher numbers. But the capital expenditure for our two key rivals, if you like, Alpha HPA and FYI, from their studies, which are a few years old, are sort of in the 350 to 400 million Australian dollars. And
why is it okay? So why are your numbers so good? Because we're running out of, we don't have a lot of time left, but
no, that's okay. Yeah.
Why are these numbers so compelling? I mean, you've said $3,500 per ton for production. You said that it sells at 25,000. So that, well, between, let's call it 18 to 25,000 per ton. Great margin. 250 mil for the plant when others are doing it for sort of 350 to 600 mil. What I want to know is, why is this the numbers seem compelling.
Yep.
What is it about this project that brings you to these conclusions?
So it's really the natural advantages of the nature of the material in the lake. Okay, so it occurs in the top 2 meters of the salt lake. It's naturally mostly less than 1 micron in grain size. So you can imagine it's like nanometer in scale, and that actually gives you an infinite surface area. Okay, all these millions and billions of little particles, infinite surface area. So one, it's going to be cheap to mine. So it costs us next to nothing, basically. We're going to dig it up, stockpile it, draw it down every 3 years, and we're going to take it off site. So that's going to do one big thing for us, and that's going to speed up the permitting of the mining lease application. So we think we can get it through in 18 months to 2 years max, as opposed to 3 years, 5 years, 7 years if we had a big gold project with an on-site cyanide plant, right? That's how different it is. Yep. This is just a quarrying operation. We're going to take it off probably to Kalgoorlie into some already permitted industrial yard, where we're going to use sulfuric acid, which, as we mentioned, is going to be cheaper and it just easier to use. You need lower grade steel in the plant than you do with hydrochloric acid. And it's those things that lead to this much lower operating cost and also the capital cost. I will say, there is a significant byproduct credit in there. We're going to produce quite a significant amount of potash. Obviously, potash hasn't been the flavor of the month recently, but that's because it's coming from brines. And again, just to be very clear, this is not a brine deposit. This is a clay deposit. It's just loose clay sitting on the top, of the lake. So that's also going to allow us, we believe, to get the plant permitted much more quickly than if we were building it out in the bush, with issues with groundwater tables, long-term monitoring of environment. Right. Et cetera. So that will also speed things up. So that's why we believe we can get to production, at least in a small scale, within a 3-year period, say. I don't want to overpromise, but, around about 3 years, if everything goes according to plan. And been around too long to know that often doesn't happen. But look, that's the time frame that we believe. And at that point, there will be a shortage, we believe, of HPA. So prices should be in our favor in about that time.
Yeah, I can see that the market, we haven't even got into what HPA, just briefly, what's HPA used for?
Okay, I can do, that's very quick to do. Mine's an Apple phone, but if you recall the Samsung phones.
That was mine.
Okay, well, there you go, from a few years ago. We probably all got a little bit burnt because we ended up, the Samsung phones were exploding. And that's because HPA is used as the separator between the anode and the cathode in lithium-ion batteries and other battery architectures. It's thermally inert, so it stops the heat transmitting between the two. But chemically, the lithium ions can actually get through the HPA material. So when that separator is not doing its job, the heat transfers and you get a bang. Second big use is actually in LEDs. So most of the lights that you see around are all being put in nowadays. Light emitting diodes. HPA has very strong brightness, and so it's used as the backing on a lot of the transistors that we see in the LED screen. So on your TVs as well, OLEDs and ULEDs, and so Samsung, LG, all of those things. And that market is expanding, quite dramatically. So between those two, that is the dominant use of HPA, and that's where you have to build your business. There's a lot of noise made by various players in the space. Oh, we've got 5N, very, very pure material. We can make make sapphire glass, but the volumes in there are minuscule.
Minuscule.
It's cream on the top. You have to build in that bulk business, and then everything else, is cream on the top there.
All right. One last question before I'm going to ask you to wrap it up with 3 reasons people should sit up and take notice. But before we get to the 3 reasons, what about, actually 2 questions, Mike, sorry. Funding, got enough dollars in the bank to do what you need to do?
Yes, we've got enough funding to take us to the end of the pre-feasibility study. The last capital raise is very strongly supported by our 2 major German shareholders, who between them own about 22% of the company. So we're pretty well funded going forward.
All right. And I did say 2, funding. Just tell us what you're going to be doing coming into the end of the year, and just what's the next steps?
Yeah. So by the end of the year, we'll have lodged our mining lease application. That'll set in process the whole, set of things that need to happen for us to get that lease granted over the next 18 months or so. And then in the next quarter, we will be able to produce material in bulk. We're currently optimizing this sulfuric acid leach that has been specially designed for this material. That's a very straightforward process. It's not complicated. It just needs to be scaled up. We haven't had any problems so far. And then so sometime next quarter, we'll start to have significant material that we can hand out then to potential, offtake partners. And I will say, look, HPA test work, scoping studies, PFS is not the sexiest thing in the marketplace. All right, that's probably reflected in the share price a little bit. We're a little bit disappointed it hasn't sort of taken off, but I did know it was going to be a slow burn, and so we are still committed to exploring on our Arc and battery metals project again here in Western Australia. We've got some excellent nickel, copper, rare earth, and lithium anomalies that have never been drilled before, and we'll look to do a small drill program, small to medium-sized drill program, end of the first quarter, next year in there. So it's always important to sell the exploration, sizzle in there as well. So
100%, and we haven't even. I don't like to go for too long because people like
people fall asleep for too long. Yeah.
But there is a lot more to talk about. Mike, you're going to have to come back in the new year and give us an update, because there is a lot to get through here. Lake Hope sounds very hopeful, but it actually sounds more than hopeful, because, as you said, it's more of a quarry operation. So it's not complex. The complexity comes right at the end. Tell us 3 reasons why they should be sitting up and taking notice of Impact Minerals. ASX code, by the way, I forgot to say, ladies and gentlemen, it's IPT.
Indeed. Look, we have a world-class deposit that we believe is going to be able to produce high-purity alumina at least 50% cheaper than anyone else in the world. So we can be a player in the space. We're on a road to development over the next couple of years. We believe that the market cap can increase very significantly from here, following in the footsteps of Alpha HPA that recently hit $1 billion. And that won't happen overnight, but if you stay with us over the next few years, there's a definite chance that's going to happen. And thirdly, we still are explorers at heart, despite the fact we're doing the development, and we'll have drill results also in the first half of next year. So it's going to be all action stations for us in 2024, Kerry, and it'll be great to come back and tell you about it.
Well, there you go. Not a big long Christmas break for Dr. Jones, as he said, but he's going to keep calm. He is the doctor after all. Impact Minerals, as I said, the ASX code is IPT. And Mike said it earlier. He said there are 4 things that you need to look for. Is it the biggest? Has it got the highest grade? Is it the first to market? And is it the lowest cost? And Mike's already told you this is low cost, because it's right there. It's like a quarry operation. It's really interesting, ladies and gentlemen. But if you want to find out more, go to the Impact Minerals website. There's a fantastic presentation that Mike has done recently at the Noosa Mining Conference. It will actually show you a little bit more about the project, but more importantly, what is HPA used for and why this project has got him so excited. But for now, Mike, thanks so much for joining me on Making Money Matter.
Thanks, Kerry.